Hey everybody, coming to you live here from Casa Rocha Studios. I just put out a new video with our friends over at Lowlights Podcast. A lot about my personal story, and I thought you, our loyal Latino Vote podcast listeners and YouTubers, would love to listen to it. So we're going to put it here for you, and I wanted you to take some time to learn a little bit more about me. I hope you appreciate it as much as I did. Have a good evening.
On this week's episode of Lowlights, we're so lucky to be joined by a man who I've had the privilege to get to know over the past year. He's a businessman, he's an author, he's a political mastermind. If he's not in the office and he's not on TV, he's in the gym, he's the wearer of many a cowboy hat, and he's a real man's man. From Tyler, Texas, the host of the Rocha Revolution on Substack, it's the one and only Chuck Rocha.
Man, that's a lot to live up to right there.
And I'm sure there's some other things I left out, so forgive me.
You forgot to mention fishing extraordinaire.
Fishing extraordinaire. Well, you know, I have a question written about that.
Good,
so
good.
We're not going to leave that out.
Good.
But no, Chuck, thank you so much, man, for coming on the podcast. You are such an inspiration. And I'm so excited for our listeners to be able to hear your story directly from you. So,
well, and I appreciate you making the space. And, you know, I got a privilege to come up and see you in Connecticut and see some of your co-workers and co-students. And just know that it's not lost on me that you invited me up. And I think folks would give me a voice, and my voice is very unique. Just know that I appreciate you and I see what you're doing as well. And the space on this podcast with the Lowlights, I like that you're doing this as well.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. And you give a voice to so many as well. So it definitely goes both ways. And I appreciate everything that you do. But I definitely want to get into it. You know, I've heard you do many of these interviews before, Chuck. You know, usually, you come on a podcast or go on CNN, you talk about political strategy, you talk about the work that you're doing, to lead successful, incredibly successful political campaigns, the work that you're doing, to re-engage young men in the political process. But one thing, if you listen to the interviews that you do, you'll never not talk about all of those things in the context of your own life. The experiences that you had when you were growing up in Texas, and how some of the life circumstances that you navigated along the way played into you having the success that you've had as a political consultant. And so those are some of the things that I want to talk about today. It's your story, the personal story, the life that, that you've lived. And I want to start here. Studies show just how important it is for boys to have strong male role models growing up. And, it could be a father, could be an uncle, could be an older brother like me, could be a teacher, could be a mentor. And I've heard you talk about some of the role models who you had growing up. You talk about your grandmothers, Evelyn and Carmen, I think were their names. I know they were, integral characters in your upbringing. But I haven't heard you talk much about some of the male role models you had growing up. But I know you had some. So can you tell us about them?
Yeah, and it would probably start, and I appreciate you asking these questions. I think a lot of young men grew up like I grew up without a father. Yeah. My father left when I was 5 years old. My mother likes to say she had 2 children and was divorced and wasn't old enough to get in a nightclub. So she was just a baby with 2 babies. And we lived in a trailer house. For those of you who ain't from East Texas, that's a mobile home that you could hook to a truck and move away. Right next door to my grandmother, Mamaw, Evelyn Bussell. And who we are talking about now, who is Charlie Bussell. Charlie Bussell was my grandfather. I called him Papaw. Some people called him CJ. He only had a 3rd grade education. He also was a World War II veteran. That's how old I am. I was raised by a World War II veteran. Now, he would lie about his age to get into the shipyards and into the service, which was the Air Force, at 17.
Wow.
And he would go into the Houston shipyards, and keep in mind, he had never really been to school. He could only read on a 3rd grade level, but somehow passed to get in. And then they sent him to, all places, Alaska.
Jeez.
And so this boy from East Texas, his family, we would find out, was from Tennessee. And they were dirt poor people that came to East Texas to get this, to farm sugar cane. After the time when slavery was outlawed, there was lots of poor people from the middle of the country that moved to the South that took a lot of the jobs that slaves had for low-income workers. At this time, there's no Mexican immigrants in East Texas. So my granddad, whose family was so poor, they abandoned him. And he was raised by this guy on this land that I would be raised on. with a bunch of boys to farm sugar cane. So Papa probably was the biggest role model I had growing up, who taught me a lot of things. And I said this the other day on CNN, is on Abby Phillips' show, when she said, what is the best advice you ever got from somebody? And I said, it was my grandfather saying that I should put the tools back. He had a shop, and he was a carpenter. He was a plumber. He was a welder. He was all of these things that he had taught himself, right? And he taught me responsibility that I didn't know he was teaching me at the time. But if I went out and messed with one of his tools in the shop and didn't put it back, he knew exactly where it would go. And I'd get a spanking or I'd get whatever. But I would quickly learn a lesson to put things back till today that helps me stay super uber organized. People are always, and I know we'll get to the thing about me not going to college, me being a teenage father myself. But when you say that, when I look at political strategy and I think about how I talk about it, it's those lessons, because I didn't go to college. So I draw from the experience of being around real working people like my grandparents, of actually working with my hands and getting dirty, and having folks who've actually put their hands on me and me back. That's a good way of saying fist fighting a lot, and growing up in the woods of East Texas. So I think he's the man who, for all you boys out there, taught me how to be a man. You said yes, sir, no, sir to everybody. You said no, ma'am, and yes, ma'am to everybody. You did not wear this hat at a table. You did not start what I'd call grab assing at the supper table. That supper table was not a place to play games. You didn't show up with no Nintendo. You weren't there cutting jokes. You came to the supper table with Papa to eat, and to eat with your mouth closed, and to show good manners. And I think those little things really, really stick with me today. Definitely.
How long did you have with Papa?
Oh, my God. He was with us for a long time. He lived. Now, keep in mind, this man had smoked cigarettes since he was 12 years old. And he smoked his entire life. I remember Mama and Papa didn't share the same bedroom because Papa would have night terrors. And so I slept
from his time in the military.
Right. In the military and all the things. Right. And so he would scream in his sleep. And so Mama, and never in one moment, this is funny, my family's going to die, I'm telling our secrets. But in my whole life of growing up, I never knew them to share a bedroom. So he had a little bedroom next to Mama's, and there were two single beds in there. And I slept with Papa because I was the oldest of all the grandchildren. My mama was next door or working night shift or something. I spent a lot of time in their house. And so watching him and understanding, like him get up in the middle of the night to smoke cigarettes, he would still live to be his mid-70s. And we didn't lose Papa until he had a stroke because of, his carotid artery was all messed up. But he lived to be 2011. 2011, he passed. So he lived a pretty long life and a hard life. He quit smoking cigarettes probably the last 10 years of his life and chewed tobacco.
Better late than never. Okay, well.
That's right.
Well, I can tell, even though he's been gone for about 15 years, he lives on. His legacy lives on in you and the work that you do and the impact that you make, right? Every single day, which I think is incredibly powerful. But I do want to pick up the thread that you just put down about how you didn't go to college. And one of your most famous hashtags on Twitter, for those who follow you, everyone should follow you. We'll put your hashtag up on the screen. But, is no college degree required or no degree required. And you're very open about the fact that you did not go to college. But what you did do, Chuck, was cut your teeth in rubber tire factories, starting from, I think, when you were like 19 years old. So, what did you learn about the world, and what did you maybe even learn about yourself working in that factory that's helped you be so successful at the work that you do today?
Part of the things is what, and I don't talk about this very much, is part of the things is what I didn't learn. Like I knew nothing about global economics. I knew nothing about economic policy. I knew nothing about policy whatsoever. And I think that naivety, if I use that right, I was like every other farm boy in East Texas. I worked in that factory. We never had much money, So a vacation for my family was maybe in the summertime. My mama would load us up in my grandmother's 1972 LTD. And we would drive to Dallas to go to Six Flags. And that was a big vacation for us. So I tell you that to say that I learned obviously lessons around working people, but working in the factory. And I don't talk about this a lot either. But in the factory, it was all black and white men. Not very many women, but there was a spattering of women. But women would make up less than probably 1 or 2% of the workforce. It was hard, dirty, back-breaking work. Not a lot of Latinos. I make a joke that every Latino that worked in the factory was named Rocha because my dad 5 of his brothers, a bunch of my cousins all lived there, and there was a couple other Latinos in there. So it wasn't like this Latino stronghold. Chuck was in La Raza. No. I'm stuck in the factory. Now, my daddy had worked there for over 20 years when I went to work there. My daddy did me a favor. He left when I was young. He always paid child support. We didn't see him that often, but he was around. He had a whole separate family he was dealing with. I don't hold that against him. But when I had my son when I was 19, I had been working several jobs. I always worked. I'd carried on a tradition of working. I was a milkman. I was all these things, working in grocery stores, chopping wood, hustling all kinds of things. I went to my dad after Charles was born and said, I need a job with healthcare. I've got this baby now. I got this woman pregnant. She was crazy. All the things that go along with teenage pregnancy. And I had taken him from her and won custody of him when he was just a couple months old. So I have full responsibility of this baby. I move into a house next door to my grandparents, but working into that factory is where I learned about how to organize without knowing I was learning to organize. People in there needed things done. And I write about this in my book, T.O. Bernie. I tell this story of how a guy came to me. I hadn't been there 6 months, maybe less than a year. And he's like, Chuck, I need a union steward on C team. C team was my team I worked. The factory ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. C team was the shift work for graveyard and second shift, and we would rotate back and forth from night shift to afternoon shift. One was 3 in the afternoon to 11 in the morning. That's the afternoon shift. And then there was a shift at night from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And it was a horrible shift because you couldn't get used to one because you're bouncing back and forth. So when our union steward left, it left an opening and nobody signed up to be the union steward because all the young people, the new hires were on that shift because it was the shittiest shift.
Yeah.
So he comes to me and he's like, Rocha, why don't you do this? Everybody knows your daddy. He's in management now. My daddy had worked his way up from being a janitor to being a nighttime superintendent. Back then, you didn't have to have a college degree.
Right.
My dad had done some junior college, but never had a degree to be a supervisor. And so he's like, you should do it. All these guys like your dad. He's a good guy. Everybody, he don't give the union any trouble and people would like you. And he goes, plus, keep in mind, there's no Latinos in my entire department.
Yeah.
He said, the white guys would enjoy you because you sound like them. And the black guys would probably vote for you and support you because you look like them. That's just real talk. And I was like,
that's real talk. Mm-hmm.
The conclusion of that long story is this. This is the most important thing that I tell kids everywhere I speak at any college.
Yeah, listen.
It's funny, I never went to college, but I'm paid to speak at colleges.
That's right.
So the thing that I tell people is, he said, Chuck, if you will, I was like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do what you want me to do because I've got to load the machine. And this is the best job I have ever had. Cadillac Healthcare, a pension, and I'm making $25 an hour and get all the overtime that I want. I have hit redneck nirvana. And he turned to me and said a statement to me that changed my life forever and put me in front of this mic today. He said, oh, Chuck, he said, if you need to do union business, the union will bring somebody in on overtime to do your job for you so you can handle union business. And I was like, sign me up.
Say less.
This is an important political lesson for everybody because I didn't do that to save my fellow man. I didn't do that to make the world a better place. I didn't do that to cure world hunger. I did that because it helped Chuck Rocha not have to load the machine and still get paid money. But when I did that, this is a lesson to all you young men and young women for that matter. It opened a bridge up to me to learn something about something I had no idea about that I was really fucking good at.
Right.
I was good at defending people. And then the last bit of that story is it would help me connect the dots later in my life for all of you men to realize that I had spent my entire life protecting people. I weighed 200 pounds. I know we'll maybe get to that later. When I was in freshman in high school, I was the size I am now. I was always a big, strong boy. And I always kind of had a big mouth too. So I spent my life protecting my mother, who was 100 pounds sopping wet. Keep in mind, I was grown in 18 and my mother was just 35 years old. It's crazy. So I had fought grown men most of my life through whatever I was doing around her dating life or other things I put myself in front of. When I went to high school, I became an all-state football player because I liked fighting. And so I was protecting a quarterback, protecting my sister, protecting my grandmother. And now I'm in this position in this union. And my job is to protect my coworkers from the man telling them that they can't do this or that, and they have to come through me first. Holy shit, I was really good at that.
Well, look, that's hard work. I know you're talking about it in a very positive light, but that's extremely hard work. And I want to connect a few dots here, to bring it to politics a little bit. it's no secret that when you talk about some of the trends that we're seeing now electorally, Hispanic men with a college degree vote pretty differently than those Hispanic men without a college degree. And I've heard you say that this is because when you have a college degree, it's almost like you feel like you have a way out. You at least can see and conceive of a way out. For you, when you were working in that factory, when you were not only trying to provide for yourself, but also protecting, as you say, right, your fellow coworkers, and probably a pretty tough environment, did you feel like you had a way out? I mean, like, were you even thinking about that? If you were, I guess, how attainable did it seem like you could, how attainable did it seem like it was for you to one day, go off and maybe pursue greater dreams? I don't know.
There was never a fathom early on of a way out. The way out was getting the job in the factory. Many people that worked in that factory thought they had made it.
Yeah.
Because this was the last remnants of the job you could work for 30 years, have a pension and health care for life.
Yeah.
It was one of those jobs where in the old days, a man could go to work, his wife could stay at home, she could raise 2 kids, they could buy a boat and maybe take a vacation once a year locally, making 70 or 80 grand a year in East Texas. It went a long way.
Wow.
Back then, right? If you worked no overtime, you could make 40 or 50, right? $1,000, which was big money back then. I remember for 40 hours a week, no overtime, I made about $38,000 a year. Big. Like it was 1990, y'all.
Yeah.
So I tell you that to say that I never knew better of quote unquote the way out, but a time would come when I would see that. When I started getting active in politics and the steelworkers asked me to go do this experimental program, which was the first political thing I'd ever got quote unquote paid to do, was 1996. And I write about this in my book. When the union told me I could take a leave of absence, they would pay me again to pay me like I'm at work. But I didn't even have to go to work. My whole job was going to be getting union members to vote for Democrats in this congressional state. I was like, holy shit, this is the best thing ever. I do not have to go to work and you're going to pay me like I'm at work. And on top of that, you're going to give me mileage for every mile that I drive my truck to pay me back my mileage. This is when I started seeing, there's other things out there. I got on my first airplane. I came to D.C. I went to the Meany Center and got trained on what an organizer was doing. There was only 25 people in this first experimental program. That's when I started saying, oh my God, people make a living doing this. I write a funny story in the book because the folks at the AFL-CIO said when I called them, I didn't know where I could stay in Dallas, Fort Worth. I'd never been anywhere really but Six Flags. And they were like, we'll get you corporate housing so you don't have to drive back and forth to Tyler, which was 2 hours away. And I remember having a conversation with somebody after that, asking, I wonder which corporation they were going to put me up in. And I didn't know that corporations had housing. I didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was corporate apartments that came fully furnished. I thought I was going to live at Coca-Cola. This is me, the ignorance of what I was and still am to some degree of the not being naive is part of that. But those is when the light started coming on of, oh my God, there's more I could do. And I saw a way out of all my friends. And this was the last point on this, is there was rumors. And this is how we started really getting politically involved in my factory, that the company Goodyear was thinking about offshoring our tire plant to Mexico or China. And so we started getting involved in the NAFTA fight and calling our congressman, in the PNTR fight, which was most preferred trade status for China. And so we started getting involved in these public policy debates. And this is when I started learning that public policy could affect workers like me. And I start connecting the dots. And I started realizing that people make a living fighting for workers, people like me, to save their jobs in community. Like, this is how all these things get connected. I haven't talked about this too much on any of these podcast interviews, but that's how Chuck Rocha is literally born into the movement.
But Chuck, look, you're such a confident guy, and I think it's something that I respect so tremendously about you. So can you share, are there any tips that you've, maybe developed over your time in the green room, in the studio, when you're about to go live on CNN, or when you're about to walk on a stage, that's helped you sort of center yourself and maybe get yourself in the zone and ready for whatever you're about to do?
Keep it simple. In everything that we are told to do, we're told to play by the rules, go to the best college you can afford, get as many degrees as you can get, and go get the best job you can get.
Yeah.
And none of that is wrong. But because we put so much emphasis on that, sometimes we forget the simplistic truths of life. And if you can combine the best people who do the best work is the folks who went to the best colleges, like you, who haven't forgotten where they've come from, like you, and folks that live their values, like you. I'm not sucking up to you because you're going to help me be some superstar. I'm already a pretty damn big star. I'm telling you that because you're a true reflection of what we say kids should be doing, which is doing this. But can everybody do that? No. And here's the point I want to make, is that we want to sound smart just for the goodness of sounding smart. I live with, even though I am Chuck Rocha, and I'm talking about myself in the third person now here like an egotistical asshole, but I know the persona that folks think about me. And I'm that on TV. I'm that in real life. I say a lot of shit that gets me in trouble, but I am who I am. But I'm also very insecure. And it's okay because I have to be in the most powerful rooms in the country. And if somebody said and rolled a map down and said, show me where Germany is on this map, I couldn't probably do it. I may could get close because I know where Europe is and Asia. But little things like that, when they're talking about the nuances of a cap and trade economic system, I don't know what they're talking about. I have a general understanding a little bit because I'm 56 years old now. But you have to remember, I am Generation X. I came of age before the internet, and now I've dealt with the internet. I am the last bastion of somebody who did my homework in a world book with paper, a whole set of them, and then now have a new Substack and a TikTok, and was making TikTok videos this morning at the gym, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
So being able to evolve and being able to do that's one. And the last point is, don't be scared to be you. We are taught our whole life we have to be a certain way. Yeah. We have to wear the khaki pants, wear the white button up, get the blue blazer, talk about what college we went to, talk about where we're going to vacation, talk about the things in social circles. And we're scared to talk about what makes us different in our personal experience. When you're in that room in corporate America, nonprofits or campaigns, know that everybody else has that same experience of college, whatever that college experience may have been. It could have been dead. It could have been their mom and daddy rich. It could be that they're super poor because they spent all their money to go to college. Everybody's different. And whatever that little thing is that makes you different, was your grandparents African immigrants? Was your uncle somebody that fled Haiti to come here? Was somebody else in your life somebody who'd come from Ireland and started, whatever the thing is? I tell you all of those things to say, lean into the piece that makes your part of a story, add something to a conversation that may not be out of a book or out of something you're supposed to learn in college. It took me a long time not to be feeling inadequate because I talk like this. And then I started just leaning into, look, I talk like this. It used to be a lot worse, my accent, but it makes me different.
What do you mean a lot worse?
Well, when you talk like this here, folks can't understand you. So you really literally have to work on your English, right? So lean into what makes you different.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's an experience that we can all relate to, and such great advice.